Hi there. I wanted to make a video to review with you again the assessment information that we talked about in class in terms of the expectations for your work at the Garcia Center. My purpose is just to make sure that you have a really good understanding of what it is you're expected to do so that this experience is positive for you and hopefully positive for the student, and that we're able to provide the Garcia Center with some helpful information. So the assessment slides that we talked about in class are available here in the Math Consultation Project tab. You'll see it there in the blue menu on Blackboard. You can open the assessment file. I've already downloaded it, so I'm going to pull it up. And if you'll go to the first slide, it gives you a list of what you need to do by grade level, because all the tools that we have available are not necessarily equally effective across grade levels. But the first thing you're going to do is something we'll do the same for every student we're working with, and that is the Easy CBM benchmark test, the Math CBM benchmark test. As I mentioned in class last night, there'll be a binder there with that protocol in it for all of the grade levels. When you open it up, the first thing you're going to see is this handout that I gave you in class last night that tells you what the benchmarks are for beginning, middle, and end of year benchmark tests for each of the grade levels. And this is set up to identify whether the child is at very low risk of not meeting benchmarks, if they're at some risk, or if they're at high risk. And I've mentioned to you all before, I don't like that word risk, but I think that we're all just want to make sure that we understand that what we're trying to do is determine, is this a child who's going to need additional support in order to be able to meet grade level standards. Interestingly enough, on the benchmarks, they label it beginning, middle, end of year, what we think of as boy, moi, and eoi. When you look at the protocols themselves, they're labeled fall, winter, spring. So obviously middle of the year is winter, so that's the protocol that you will use. You can go through the binder, pull the specific assessment that you're going to use. As I mentioned, you can make a photocopy of it right there at the Garcia Center. You can ask your Mika, but there's a file cabinet that'll have my name on it. You'll be able to go in and maybe the name of our class, pull the materials that you need. There's going to be some binders there that you can use to select a binder and use it for keeping all the information about the student that you're working with. Protocols, that's where you'll be able to put your recommendation summary when you get that developed and share with the tutors at the Garcia Center. This assessment is very easy to do once you make the copy. Also in that paperwork that I gave you last night, and on the second page of the paper that's at the front of this binder, it just tells you how to administer the probe. It can be done with paper and pencil. One of the things that's critical is that the student has to answer each of the questions or it cannot be scored. So please make sure that you remind the student just to do the best they can and choose what they think might be the best answer, because we can't leave any of them blank. Once you have finished administering that protocol, you need to send me a list of the students' answers. It will either be A, B, or C for each assessment. And I'll be able to enter those scores because I have access to the online system, and send you back and tell you how they performed on the benchmarks. So that one is very, very straightforward. For your second assessment, if you're working with a first grader, you're going to use the TEMIO. This is a test that was developed here in Texas, Bryant, and others, for doing some screening and progress monitoring in an RTI system that's very sensitive to the needs of young learners. So somewhat a parallel to the TPRI for those of you who are familiar with that particular assessment. This is a similar type of assessment in math. Make sure that you use the TEMIO. I've given you the link to go where you can get the manual, you can get the test protocol. I suggest that you spend some time with it, review those materials, make sure you're really clear about what you need to do when you get out to work with your student. This is really an assessment designed for teachers to be able to go and download it and use it. I think you'll find it very self-explanatory, but again, if you've got questions, give me a call. For your second graders, you can either use the TEMIO, the second grade protocol, or you can use the CBM probes, which is what you will definitely use with students from 3rd through 6th grade. Big binder that I showed you last night in class. When you open it up, the first thing that you have behind the first tab is the directions. And what this tells you is how many minutes you're going to allow the students to attempt to answer as many of the problems as possible. 1st and 2nd grade, 2 minutes. So there are 2 protocols, one in calculation, one in reasoning, 4 minutes to administer those measures. 3rd and 4th graders, it's 3 minutes. 5th graders and 6th graders, 5th graders 5 minutes, and 6th graders 6 minutes. There's a little script that tells you once you hand the student their paper how to explain the process to them. You will need a way of timing, so you're going to need a stopwatch either on your phone or a separate stopwatch that you use when you administer that assessment. Remember, this is scored using digits correct, which we went through to some extent last night in class. It's something that you practiced when you were working on your Iris Center module. If you'll remember, I gave you this one-page handout that explains to you how to calculate digits correct. And then I also gave you an additional handout that has much more extensive information about how to calculate digits correct. So you've got the information that you need. One of the things one of the pieces of paper that I gave you last night, also the manual will be available to you. But if you look on this step 2, it talks to you about how to select a level of progress monitoring material. Generally, we're going to use the progress monitoring material for the grade that the student is in. If your student did not do well on the benchmark and you don't anticipate them doing well, you probably want to start 1 grade level below their actual grade. It suggests that you assess the student. It says on 2 separate days you may or may not be able to do that. Administer the test 1 grade level lower than the student's grade level. If they score between 10 and 15, use that grade level test. If they don't meet that 10 and 15 and they're still lower, you're going to drop back even 1 more. If they're at 15 blanks or above, then you can consider that grade appropriate material. I hope that was clear. Again, it's very self-explanatory if you read this step 2, which I provided you and which I will leave in the binder. We talked about this figure 4 that I also gave you last night in class, which talks about the timing and the directions, which I've already reviewed with you. And then that is where there's even more extensive information about scoring digits correct if you still have questions about that. Please let me know. Again, I'm more than happy to assist you. Once you have done your benchmark and your secondary assessment, which will either be the TEMI or the CBM probes, then I want you to look at the patterns of strengths that the student has, look at areas of need, and I want you to administer at least 1 subtest of the key math. And this is a little bit more extensive in terms of directions and being able to administer the assessment appropriately. Everyone will have to do the numeration subtest because it is that numeration subtest score that establishes where you begin in each of the other subtests. I gave you the administration procedures, a handout with that last night in class. That will also be in the bag with the key math instrument. I know this is going to be a little trickier because there's only 1 protocol and you all are going to have to share it, but I think that you can work it out and you can do just fine. One of the first things you have to do is figure out the child's chronological age. There's a guideline for telling you exactly how to do that. Essentially, you determine based on the date of your assessment, you're going to subtract that student's date of birth from that in order to determine their chronological age. And you may have to borrow from, the months to get days. So in other words, I'm born on the 25th of August, right? Well, if you were assessing me on the 3rd of September and you put, 2017, 9th month, 3rd day, and then you were going to subtract my birth date, here it's going to say 8, and here it's going to say 25, You can't take 25 from 3, so you're going to have to borrow 30 days and calculate that way. But these directions are very clear about what you would need to do. Sorry, I feel like I'm going to sneeze. There's an easel that you put in front of the student to show them protocol items. There's a script that will tell you exactly what it is you're going to say to the student. Remember that we talked last night about the fact that you're going to have to establish a basal and a ceiling. So based on the child's numeration score, you're going to know, okay, I'm going to start at this spot. Or in the numeration measure, you determine where you're going to start based on the child's age. The basal is 3 correct scores in a row before the first incorrect item, or 3 correct items before the first incorrect item. And then you test until the child misses 4 in a row. Now, if you start and the child misses one of those first 3 items that you administer, you're going to need to go back until you can hit that basal, and then test until you get those 4 incorrect in a row, which will establish your ceiling. That's very well explained to you. There is, this protocol is a little more extensive in terms of scoring. You're going to make a copy of the test booklet, and then you're going to be able to go through and use the norms that are in the manual to tell you what the student's score is, their scale score, right? This has you calculate confidence intervals, so you sort of can be able to situate this child's score within a range of expected scores. You're going to calculate their grade, an age equivalent, and a percentile rank, okay? And there's a lot of information in that manual that you can look at that will help you understand how that's going to be used. I think it'll be really helpful for you to have opportunity to administer an item like this. I hope that you will go through and carefully, again, read those directions and be prepared to do so. I did provide those to you last night, so it shouldn't be a problem. Sorry, you can see me, but I can't see my computer screen anymore. So please let me know. Again, if you have any questions, all of these protocols will be available for you when you arrive at the center. Go in, get yourself organized, enjoy meeting your student, and enjoy the time that you have there. Again, any questions, please don't hesitate to contact me. Hope you all have a wonderful weekend.